Gimbals can be an effective tool for filming weddings, but they can also come with their own set of challenges and obstacles as well. So for today's video, I want to explore both sides and answer the question, are gimbals really worth it for filming weddings? One thing I think many of us fall victim to, especially in the beginning stages of our filming career, is overusing the gimbal and using it for everything. And at first, I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing. I think that's what you should do because this is gonna help you refine your skills and get more comfortable behind the camera. This video isn't going to be, you should stop using your gimbal video. It's honestly quite the opposite. While I don't use a gimbal consistently, there is a time and a place where it is really effective. And it really boils down to one word: intention. Asking yourself the question, how will this impact the story? While a push in and push out shot can be a dramatic way of showing the connection of your characters and introducing them in a cinematic tone, but for the flowers? And then asking yourself the question, why am I filming this way? Is there any motivation behind this movement? Or is it more vanity driven? Will this shot create a disconnect or enhance the overall feeling within my film? You know, when I first got going, I would film every shot with a gimbal and add camera movement for absolutely no reason other than I thought every shot needed movement in order to create an interesting story. But in reality, you can actually tell a powerful story through simple and intentional framing. Fiore Films is a great example of this. If you haven't heard of them, they are just absolutely incredible. Every shot is intentionally framed with purpose and creates a beautiful composition that tells a unique story. And oftentimes it's difficult to be intentional with our movement and have this level of awareness on the wedding day since we can't plan out every single moment. We can't control all the moving pieces on the day, so it's best to look at the patterns of a traditional wedding and what moments may warrant a gimbal versus which ones would be more realistic to go handheld. So let's dive into when to use a gimbal on the wedding day. In 2016 to 2018, I was a gimbal fiend. I mean, you couldn't pay me to get me to put this thing down. But eventually I started growing tired of the same camera movement, the cookie cutter feeling, and I really vowed to start focusing on only using the gimbal during certain moments. And these moments included the location shots, the bride walking down the aisle, the bride and groom entering the reception during the introductions, the first dance, wide complimentary shots of the reception, and then the send-off. And soon I realized that these were my main focus points for potentially using a gimbal. And most of them were actually centered around my character moving versus me manufacturing that movement. Instead of forcing movement within my frame, my character is influencing that motion to help create the feeling and carry the audience through the story. Of course, this is just a basic framework for what I feel could be the best opportune moments to utilize a gimbal's benefit, but the creative process is subjective and you should always embrace your unique approach. And if that's 95% a gimbal,
treat yourself.
Now, gimbal versus handheld. When it comes to using a gimbal versus going handheld, it all boils down to the type of filmmaker that you want to be. Your style, the feeling that you want to impart, what's most comfortable and enjoyable for you. And to me, there's a sense of realism and freedom when going handheld on the wedding day that a gimbal just can't replicate. Some moments that feel more vulnerable and real can be when the camera jitters slightly, as if the camera is unveiling how that character is feeling. However, on the flip side, there is an elevated sense of production value that can come from using a gimbal. And not all cameras have great image stabilization, so using one to help you get buttery smooth shots to create compelling stories is definitely a must. So if you don't have a camera with iBiz, a gimbal would be a good option to consider. And the Zhiyun weebil 3S is a solid budget-friendly option for wedding filmmakers. It's been a while since I've used a gimbal, and honestly, these things have changed and they've come a long way. For one, I love the addition of the wrist support and the extendable sling grip, which makes it much more diverse for both low angle shots and overall comfort while using it for long periods of time. Another incredible feature is the Bluetooth shutter control, which allows you complete control over recording. It also comes with a built-in bicolored light that's between 2600 and 5500 Kelvin. This can be great for adding some fill light during the reception and even the send-off, which limits you from having to buy an additional accessory, which is pretty cool. You also get 11.5 hours of runtime, which for me would be plenty for the wedding day since I'm only using this for certain moments and I'm not using it consistently throughout the day. And the last feature that I think is extremely useful for wedding filmmakers is the ability to customize your controls. You can now dial in your settings without having to even touch the camera, which was always a hindrance on the wedding day, let's be honest. So if you're interested in checking out the weebil 3S, if you're looking for a gimbal to just add to your gear bag this year, definitely consider checking this one out. I'll have a link for more information down below. But the last thing I want to dive into with this video is unpacking why you may not even need a gimbal at all. So while gimbals can be fun, they're super effective for achieving smooth shots, but let's talk about some ways that they can really hinder your creativity. And the first is over-reliance on technology. Relying too heavily on gimbals can lead to a lack of creativity and spontaneity within your shots, potentially resulting in a robotic or artificial feeling to your films. And the biggest is the learning curve. Mastering the use of a gimbal requires practice and skill. Balancing the gimbal, controlling movement, adjusting your settings to different scenarios can all be a very frustrating experience. And the last reason is obtrusiveness. Now this one is subjective, but for me, I definitely feel like gimbals draw attention to themselves, especially if they aren't used discreetly. And having overly noticeable equipment may distract from the intimacy of the moment, especially when you're trying to capture those genuine and authentic moments. And when a camera is within eyesight, typically that can warrant someone to feel a little bit, pressured and stressed and just wanting to hide away from showcasing who they really are out of fear of just making themselves look bad. So we want to try to be as incognito as we can on the wedding day so that we can really pull out those genuine and authentic moments. So what are your thoughts about gimbals? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Can't go a wedding day without them? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. So until next time, keep creating and telling beautiful stories. Peace.